My name is Nancy Lyons. I'm a mom. I'm a spouse. I am a CEO, an entrepreneur. I write a little. I talk a little. I'm a rebel. I'm a storyteller. I'm a weirdo. Is that good?
That's great.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Nancy, both for that list and for giving me your time and agreeing to be on my show. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me. You know I'll always talk to you.
I try not to take advantage of you having said that before.
Well,
because I do love talking to you. So there is a thing where maybe I should just have a weekly phone call with Nancy. But
let's do it.
It's not.
I'm in.
You have plenty of things going on in your life. But really, I do appreciate it. And I think I've said this to you, but you're someone who I look up to in a lot of ways. The way you work with people, the relational way you work with people, the way I see you parenting, and the way I see you carry yourself, I've been inspired by multiple times. So I'm just going to open with that.
You are
put
very
you on your
kind.
heels.
You are very kind, and it's mutual. I mean, I
thanks.
think
people will love this.
I hold
just
you. Let's just love each other.
Sounds good
in this episode. But true. I love how you parent, and I love who you are in the world, and I love knowing that I can go to a social justice event and run into you and your family, because that's not true of a lot of people in the community that we take for granted.
Yeah.
So I get from that we share a similar value set, which is important.
Yeah. I like the ways you can go, oh, you're here too. I assume that means a lot of things that are in alignment, rather than I was dragged along here by my partner.
Yeah.
Which is also a thing.
Yeah, that does happen. Yes, it does.
So Nancy, there's any number of things that I could ask you about. But what I'd like to ask folks is there a question or an issue or a challenge or a thing people say that in some way connects to who you are or how you identify, that you have experienced a lot, maybe you would like to experience less, or even feel you have some degree of ability to articulate well, like what is happening there?
Yeah, I don't know if I have the ability to articulate much well, but I'll try. For me, I think I've spent a good number of years working in the family equality space, and the reason for that is I think that we think that the world is fully evolved, that this country is fully evolved, and we are in this place where we accept queer families wholly and absolutely, and we don't. I think we think that marriage and the Supreme Court case that made marriage legal solved all of our problems, and that simply by virtue of the fact that we can get married, that equality exists, and it doesn't. There's a big difference between lived equality and legal equality, and I think there are a lot of humans who don't actually experience the words that our Constitution, the spirit of that document are not experienced in a lived way by a lot of people. But for me, it's queer families, 100%. And I was recently talking to somebody about why I do that work, and in fact, just this morning I was having coffee with somebody who was telling me that their daughter has recently come out, and he was talking about how amazing she was and how much he embraced who she's becoming and the movement that she's interested in participating in, and what a young activist and she is, and that she's doing pre-law in her undergrad, and just how proud of her he was. And I thanked him for being a loving parent, a loving, accepting parent, because I reminded him what I think loving, accepting parents don't realize, which is there are still kids who are kicked out when they come out. There are still kids who are homeless, who are on the streets. There are still children who are sort of embracing their identities at the same time that they are questioning whether or not they'll have the lives that are promised to us.
Yeah.
These lives of opportunity and love and commitment and family. And I think I think especially, straight white people take for granted that they can have what they want in terms of family. And I think queer people still question whether or not their lives will look like they want them to look, and whether or not they will find fulfillment and companionship and family. And I think for me, love is love. And I think as long as there is a fight to fight, I'm going to be involved in it, because there are hundreds of thousands of children in the foster care system. There are qualified parents who want to create families. And there is a huge gap preventing them from getting to each other in a lot of the states in this country. So family equality is something that's really important to me. So I guess, to answer your question in a simple and direct way, we make a lot of assumptions about where we are culturally. And I think those assumptions are still dangerous. And I think it's important for us to recognize that who we say we are and who we actually are still too far apart for the comfort of a lot of humans in our society. And we need to be deliberate and do the work and change that.
I think one thing, there's a bunch of things. You just said a bunch of stuff.
I did, sorry. I do that.
No, that's great.
I told you I wasn't going to be articulate.
I think you were more than you give yourself credit for. One of the things I think embedded in what you said is the idea of asking ourselves, each individually, and then as communities and as a country, should we get to a place where we can ask ourselves a question as a country of, are my actions in alignment with my values?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think sometimes we assume we know what our values are without even unpacking that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we think, I know my values, and then I must be doing actions that are in alignment with those, and not even fully aware of when those things are actually out of joint, because you have to be consciously thinking of them. You can't assume that they're working in concert with one another.
Oh, heck yeah. Especially white people, straight white people. I know some of the loveliest straight white people who, and this is interesting to me because I think we have politicized humans in a way that is so dangerous. And because the majority, right, of in this country are straight and white, although that's changing pretty dramatically, because the majority makes decisions for all of us, they walk through the world safely with their blinders on.
Right. We're not aware that it's it's a safe.
Exactly. Exactly.
And the idea that if someone is disadvantaged, someone else is inherently advantaged seems like a challenging idea for folks.
And we've made this a political issue.
Yeah.
And I think our humanity should not be political. How we care for each other and how we acknowledge the disparities culturally and how we decide to change it should not be politicized. It's not a red or blue issue. That's where I struggle. It's like when I talk to reasonable humans about issues that my family faces that they may not have experienced in their lifetimes, their eyes open to these realities and it's why our stories are so important, right? Like we have to tell our stories because without those stories, people have no context. They only have their own experiences to weigh. And if your experience as a straight white guy, Levi, if your experience as a straight white guy informs all of your decisions, then you're walking through the world with pretty rose-colored glasses.
And uninformed.
Right. And it's easy for you to make political decisions based solely on your tax burden or, your property taxes or whatever.
Yeah.
I often tell people I'm a business owner. Like it would behoove me to think very conservatively about my fiscal responsibilities.
Right.
It would behoove, but I can't.
Right.
I can't because and I don't want to talk politics on your podcast because I think it's dangerous, but I do think it's interesting that...
Well, you just mentioned we've politicized humanness, so there is now a thing of is there a way to talk about anything without it being political? Even if we're not, there's the electoral politics,
right.
But I think in some ways right now any conversation is political.
It's true.
Because you're either talking about something or you're ignoring that thing and talking about nothing.
Such a good point. I'm
a genius. I'm a white straight male.
I didn't want to say it because I didn't want to go to your head while...
Too late.
I'm on your show.
Oh, this is your...
Yeah, please let's not do that now.
Okay. Later.
But yeah, I think that's really well said. I don't know that we can avoid politics, and we need to, because we are so divided, and yet I want to keep believing that most humans are inherently good and decent people, and they believe what they do for good and decent reasons. Most, not all, most. And they feel forgotten. I think people that are on the other side of the political spectrum from me feel equally as forgotten or unseen or unheard, right? And that's the problem. Like, I feel like the work that I do is to represent the unseen and the unheard. The people with little or no influence, those people that, are sort of lost in the numbers. And I think people on the other side of the political spectrum feel the same way. And we're hearing that all the time, and I struggle with that because, we've got this political party that wants to align with less government, and yet where they decide to have government is in trying to regulate people.
Right. Typically people who have less access to resources, to power. Right. I don't think it's just regulating people. It seems to be about regulating certain groups of people. Absolutely.
And I used to tell people all the time, like, hey, as a business owner, I would love to be a Republican.
Yeah.
If the Republicans would be who they say they are and get out of my bedroom. As a queer business owner, get out of my bedroom. Yeah. Like, who I am at home is none of your business.
Yeah.
Unless I'm, I'm not even going to say it. I was thinking, like, unless I'm killing people in my home, then it's your business.
Right.
But other than that, it's not unless I'm committing crimes in my home, what I do there is not your business.
Right.
Also, the thing that I really struggle with, and I think this is coming up a lot in the trans conversation, is people wanting to define relationships and activities involved in those relationships between two consenting adults as good or moral or not.
Yeah.
Right? I sometimes wonder why anybody wants to go there. Like, why sexualize people's relationships?
Right.
Because that's really what's happening. When we decide that they are indecent or immoral, what we're doing is sexualizing their relationship. When, think about, you're a straight white man. Your relationship is boring, just like everybody's relationship. Right?
That's my goal.
I mean, yeah, right? Like, it's like most married people are doing the same things, right? Like, we're driving to soccer practice and we're running to the grocery store. We're trying to figure out what's for dinner. We're trying to be on time for school and work and get home and get back up again at 6 a.m. and clean our house and shovel the driveway. Like, our lives are mediocre. Let's stop trying to point at people and decide that theirs are not.
Yeah.
Because getting along in the world is just hard. It's just hard. And if I was such a huge deviant, my life would be far more thrilling than it is.
Yeah.
I am not a deviant any more than any queer person is a deviant. And I think we have to get past this idea that we can make somebody's boring life more deviant than somebody else's. I do struggle with it. I think that's coming up in the trans conversation a lot. And, I tweeted this yesterday, but I really feel this way. Like, I'm rambling. Do you like this? I'm just ranting now. It's just a rant. We don't even like.
I'll just
this
put in
is what's on my
some
mind.
rant music.
That
a
sounds
little intro.
great. Just let me go crazy in my. But I think the New York Times article that ran this weekend about the Trump administration deciding to basically make trans people non-existent to this administration. Like, what does that even mean? What does that even mean? You cannot make actual humans not exist, right? Like, I get it's a metaphor. I get it, metaphorically speaking. We're not going to respect them or acknowledge or value or provide them with any rights or protections. Okay, but they're not going to go anywhere.
Well, tell me if this is a fair conflation. Mm-hmm. I feel like folks, some initially from just pure ignorance and then now very intentionally, folks spent years denying and obfuscating the realities of human-caused climate change. Mm-hmm. But everything's still melting. Mm-hmm. The weather's still getting more intense.
Yeah, but we don't know why.
Happening.
We don't know. Isn't that what he said?
Yeah.
We don't know.
No one
we don't
knows.
know that's because of people.
But right. You don't.
It's probably Jesus.
The people
Jesus is just warmer now.
That is true. Jesus is a sweaty entity who's always like, ice caps. Like, that's why the robe is open and the sandals, just to stay cool.
There you go. White Jesus is warm.
It is boring, hot white Jesus.
Yes.
Using language to deny that something is real doesn't make it not real, but it has real consequences.
See, why don't you just interview yourself? Why am I even on this
Because
thing?
you say a smart thing, and then I get to put it in fancy words.
I like it.
It's a team effort.
Could you just be with me always?
Sure, yeah.
Is Laura going to be upset about that?
Probably not.
Okay. See, because your
likes me to have something
relationship
to
is
do.
boring.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm here to spice it up for you.
Thank
Now
you.
you have something to do. Me.
Yeah. I think
you heard it here first.
every heteronormative couple needs a radical queer lady.
Exactly.
But not for the reasons you think.
No. Just for purpose. I'm
Yeah,
here
just ranting.
Yes. I like where this is going. I'm gonna subscribe now to your podcast. I like where we're headed. Okay, what did you just say?
I just about even if you deny or erase something, there's consequences.
Right.
I think is something you're talking about, and it sounds like why you fight the fights you fight.
Yeah.
Because you're like, it's not just that I need us to be seen and our stories to be told. It's that things happen one way or the other. So letting these all things be accepted and real changes whether it becomes a natural disaster or becomes a brilliant opportunity for us to have more richness in our lives.
Absolutely. And I think I get really offended when people make it a moral issue or a Christian issue or an issue of faith, because I consider myself a person of faith. And what I don't subscribe to is organized religion.
Right. Because
I think it's the people that skew the very simple message, that all, like, I don't actually care who you worship. You could distill the messages down into simple sort of shared truths. And I think, I always think about, when Christ was asked, what does God want from us most of all, right? What is most important to God? And he said, love God and to love each other. Yeah. The end. He didn't say that you're not a homosexual. Right. He didn't say... It wasn't top of mind. Right. I don't think it actually came up at all. I don't think so either. And I find it fascinating that we have layered on all this crap to actually distort the simplicity and the meaning that faith and even Christianity has, sort of gifted to us as a platform from which we can operate. It was just like the golden rule. It was sort of that simple. Like, just love each other. Yeah. Like, that's it. Well,
so here's an area, if we can delve into this.
Let's do it.
The idea of love. Mm-hmm. So I think folks around me are tired of me talking. I've been reading All About Love by Bell Hooks lately, which is a book from 2000, but incredibly relevant. And she is a radical writer, if anyone reads Bell Hooks. And she starts early in the book with what she wants to be the working definition of love, which is being willing to put time and energy into creating space for the spiritual growth of either yourself or another person, that's how she wants to think of love. And she says spiritual is like, I don't mean a certain religion thing. I think a body-mind kind of connection piece. But she's like, we have all these other ideas where we use the word love to talk about sex or to talk about comfort or to talk about obligation, and ties it to these dysfunctional ideas about family and about relationships and about belief, and says really it is about a willingness to just create space for someone to grow and into the best version of themselves that they can be. And I think that's really interesting, and I think you can see that in what you just referenced, this sort of love God and love one another. If you read that as love one another, create space where we can all be ourselves and succeed, and whatever that means, is really great. But then if love becomes this sort of tit for tat, like I love you because you give me something and I give you something back, or it becomes almost what is that word? Conditional? Well, conditional, where you need to exchange things.
Quid pro quo?
Yeah, I'm going to keep having you guess things.
Yeah, I'll just keep going. Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Is it...
it's white, it's liquid.
Transactional?
Yes, transactional is what I was trying to think of. Okay. And we spent way too much time
trying
to get there.
I liked it.
But like that, I think we actually, a lot of the ways we think and talk about love comes from an idea of it being transactional. I get something and I give something. And I wonder even how, because you're doing this work for and with families, how you think about love within yourself and with your own family unit. Like, is that something that you spend time talking about and being really clear on what we mean by that when you and your partner and your kid are all sort of trying to talk about or even just be with one another?
Yeah, it's so interesting that you talk about love as transactional, because I know I said earlier that I believe that most humans are good, but I also think most humans are selfish. And we are, we are sort of brought up to be very concerned about our own needs, which is what we're seeing reflected in our society. So what you're talking about in terms of love also requires us to open ourselves up to other people and their needs. Yeah. And, so when we make space for people, we are caring about more than ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I think that is something that is not easy for most people, even in the context of relationships and family. And because I think, being in a long-term relationship requires compromise and truth, right? Yeah. A lot of truth and really learning to communicate. And I think I mentioned to you earlier, my partner's a therapist, and my spouse is a therapist, and she follows some, psychology guru. I don't even remember this person's name, but this is not her work. So I just want to clarify. But there's this idea that, when you assess the value or the depth or the strength of your relationship, you have to assess it based on how many of your needs are being met. And I think, we hear that people fight about money and sex and politics and getting crap done, and work, like the household chores. Like shared chores. Yeah,
that's what my therapist says to me. Yeah, you have these 4 or 5 table legs.
Exactly.
And if 3 of them are good, you're probably okay, and you can, work
exactly. And yet there's so much more. Like, to me, but when you think about a person has different priorities as their life sort of ebbs and flows, right? And I think where my spouse and I, we've been together, it'll be 25 years in March.
Wow,
which is insane. Yeah, I'm evaluating that. I'm just kidding.
You're really settled into a nice rut.
Yeah.
You're like, do we try to get out of this?
Yeah.
Or?
No, I mean, she's my person.
Yeah.
Is it hot all the time? No. Are we aligned absolutely all the time? No. Are we communicating effectively all the time? No. Am I a good spouse all the time? No. I mean, I got up the other morning and I said, God, I'm so sorry. I was such a jerk yesterday. Like, I was snippy, and I thought about it afterwards, and I thought, I don't remember the last time I did that, where I just owned some lousy behavior.
Yeah.
Or even, said
Which
sorry.
I think is way more powerful than trying to not ever do anything lousy.
Right.
That's how you react to the...
Right. But I think that because marriage and love has been romanticized and oversimplified, we have set the bar really low for what we're willing to tolerate. Yeah. And so it's interesting to me that you talk about love that way, because what I realize is the reason for the length of my relationship is the pretty consistent recalibration in terms of communication and expectations. Like, we don't do a lot of things right. And I don't know any couple that has been together for a long time that can't acknowledge that, like, in any healthy relationship. How long have you guys been together?
15 years.
Yeah, so
it's work.
So it's work. Yeah. And I think a good part of that investment is just the constant communication.
Yeah.
And I don't mean every day we talk to each other for hours. Some days we don't talk to each other at all, right? But I do think when we do talk, we really try to cut to the heart of what we need from the other one, and how we can show up for the other one. And I will tell you that, and I feel safe saying this because she doesn't listen to podcasts. But I honestly don't believe that my life would be what it is had I never met her.
Yeah.
Because she has done what you just described as love so well for me. Like, just made the space for me to do what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I saw my future before I met her.
Yeah.
But she just gets out of the way. She just doesn't, like, there are no, she's never said no to me. anything that I want to do. She's never said, don't be an idiot. Like she said, be careful,
right.
Think twice. I don't know, but it's up to you.
The light is red.
Exactly.
Run out there.
I get a lot of that. Really? Are you really going to? You have road rage. I get a lot of that. You have road rage. I'm like, yes, because this is where I can have it.
Yeah. It's safe for me to be angry
if I'm going to have rage in the car, seems good. She's like, well, I don't like it. Can you please not have it in the car with me? Yes. And so I think that extends to our kid too. I think, I expressed to you before that my parents were into corporal punishment, right? Which I am not. But they also didn't talk to me. Like what I am really aware of is my parents saw me as just another piece of property, right? So there were very defined lines. And I promised myself a long time ago when I decided to be a parent, one of the things that I committed to right away was I was going to be happy to see him whenever I saw him. That was a promise I made myself. Because I remember my parents worked so hard and they were so stressed by life that was what influenced how they saw me every day. So they would walk through the door. And I remember my mother, I remember being so happy to see her once. And I ran up the stairs and I was like, Mom, whatever, I have something to tell you. I have I did this project or whatever. And she was like, just get away from me. Just give me a minute. And that is like burned on my brain, just how that felt. And I thought, if I do nothing else, like right in this parenting gig, I just want him to feel like when I saw him, it was happy making.
Yeah.
And he's never property. He's always this gift and this choice that I make. Is he a painful choice sometimes? Yes. I sometimes worry that my life is too Instagram-y.
Yeah.
And that people think that, my kid's perfect. My kid's the dink.
Yeah.
Just like everybody's kid. Right? But nobody stops and takes a picture of when, he floods the toilet because, the toilet overflows because he puts too much crap down there because he doesn't use the garbage, right? Like nobody, who takes that picture? Nobody. Right. So it's not intentional, but I do think that I don't know that we've ever talked about it in terms of how, I don't think we've ever acknowledged that the conversations we have about what we need from each other is really just how we love each other. Right.
You're modeling it though.
Yeah. But that's
way more significant than actually talking about it. You can
so.
tell someone, because you can talk about it and not do it.
Right.
And I know from having my own kid, like she reads me like a book. It doesn't matter what words I say. She knows what's really going on. She knows if something's up or not. And
mine too. And you only have one too, right?
I only have one.
So my friend Mahtab, do you know Mahtab Razai? Yes,
I don't think so.
So you should meet Mahtab. You would love her.
Okay.
She is a principal at Crux Collaborative, and she's got a great story. She's an immigrant, and her story is fabulous. But she gave me the best piece of advice I have ever received from anybody about parenting and only. She said, because she was an only, and she was raised by her parents, who they all immigrated here when she was 6 from Iran. And she told me that being an only was great because she never felt like there wasn't enough. She never felt like she wasn't heard. She always felt like she was a part of something. But that was also the downside, because when her parents tried to have their relationship alone, right? Like when they argued, she always felt like she was a part of it. So if she didn't see resolution, it had an impact on her.
Right, because the whole world revolved around her.
Exactly.
So if there's any chaos in the world, she has to fix it.
And that had never occurred to me. She was like, it's not two parents and a child, it's a 3-way relationship. And I was like, wow, that's fascinating. And as a result, we've always tried to be really conscious of resolution. Yeah. And his involvement or witnessing of just compromise, apology, resolving the issue. Yeah. And that was super helpful. But now I want to read this book.
It's great.
The whole love thing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think if you're conscious of and constructive, because I think we sort of redefine and reconstruct the framework for our family all the time. It's always changing based on what Merrick needs, based on what my wife needs, based on what I need. Like there's it's this constantly evolving, moving thing. And I think if we're aware of that, if we're conscious of it, that's family. That's
well, it's an iterative thing.
Yeah.
Like you are someone who works iteratively. And
isn't that the truth?
That's how family operates
right?
too.
Yeah.
Hopefully. I mean, I think people can really default and go like, that's just how it is. Like you mentioned wanting to have real clarity with your son. And for me, I really like my daughter to know why I'm asking her to do a thing or not do a thing. I want her to listen to me when I ask something of her. It usually has to do with some degree of her safety or her wellness when I'm asking something. But I try to let her know my thinking behind something, so it's not just her making up the reasons behind it. I think because I always craved that as a kid. I didn't know why a rule was a rule, and I wanted to know what that rule was.
So here's my question for you. What do you do when it's just, this is what I want, damn it?
I mean, there are times I have said, this is because the other thing, I did a lot of studying when we were expecting a child. The nice thing, I mean, I don't know what it's like for adoption, but for when your wife grows a baby, you get this nice period where you can just like read scientific journals about like brain development. You'll go insane too, but that was a thing I did. And one of the things I didn't have as a kid and I wanted to give my kid was real consistency. Which meant for me, if I said no, then no is going to be the answer, even if I minutes later was like, there was no reason for me to say no. But that was my instinctive thing.
Right.
So what I started doing early on and continue to do with my daughter is if it's something like that where it's like, just because, I'll say, because that's what I told you when you asked right away, and I have to stick to my what I tell you is true. I can't go back. There's been a few times where I've been like, you know what, I was wrong. There was no need for me to stick by that. But sometimes I will just say like, I know it was just you asked me and I had to make a decision and I said yes or no to this thing and then that's just what we're going to go with. Like I don't have any better argument for you than that.
That's so interesting. I think I have not been as consistent as I should have been with no.
Well, I'm just
Do you
a
think
better
there's a way
parent.
to fix it? I think so too. Would you like? Could you? Yeah. Do you want to come over?
We're really making something happen.
I think so.
Are we co-parenting?
Yes, we might be by the end of this podcast.
My daughter always needs more weirdos.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder. I
don't think there's any
really screwed him up.
Right way.
I think he's really screwed up because
but not 'cause of
he's
that.
been able to sway stuff. Yeah, he's just screwed up because he's here.
Yeah. My kid's still spoiled. I mean, she just knows. She knows she is. That's it. That's all there
Mine
is.
too. Mine too.
Well, I don't want to make this me talking about my parenting style.
No, I like
it. A thing I'm really curious about, because I know you've been like on, what is it, like the President's Council on Family Equality or something like that?
Family Equality Council.
Yeah,
and then I did a thing at the White House that was...
Right,
yeah.
and this is past presidents.
Obama.
I will say, because I can't really imagine you.
Yes.
But something I'm interested in, just because of the advocacy work you do this advocacy for queer families, and you are a part of a queer family. But you're out there representing, advocating, and I think fighting, but in a sort of positive way.
Trying. For
these bigger picture family thing, but that takes time away from your actual family. So do you have a tension you live inside of where you're having to decide, some of the time I'm having right now that I would maybe give to being actually with my wife and with my kid are going to be present for other people or bigger ideas? Yeah. Is there any...
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the thing that we are constantly negotiating, right? Yeah. But I do know that I try to do most things on weekdays, and I try to have my weekends with my family. We try to travel or have little adventures so that time happens. But I also know, you had 9 months to grow a baby. Yeah. I don't know how long you were working on that prior to
Not that
those
long.
9 months.
I suddenly was like, wow, I was told this takes a while.
Yeah. It took us 9 years.
And I've heard, adoption is a varied thing.
And it's much harder for gay people still.
Yeah.
I think, and so my son is 12. Yeah. So it's been 20 years, since
you were in your brain
started this process.
Parenting is, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that what I really wanted was for other families to never have to go through what we went through to try and have a child.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that is shared by, my family. Yeah. And we know what a great gift adoption has been to us. Like, I tell people it took 9 years, but I also say that's who I was waiting for. Right. Like, this child is absolutely, like, if you don't believe in the divine, like, there is no way that I couldn't. because knowing this person and knowing who he is and who he is to me, like there was intervention here.
Yeah.
You know, there was a plan here that I was not privy to. I was just along for the ride. So I think because of the gift we've been given and because of the family we have, it's important that that story become part of the work and that I have the opportunity to do it. Now, the other thing that I will say is, you know, I do a lot of public speaking, which also takes away, but is a personal joy of mine. And I tell people all the time, you know, people will say to me, how do you have it all? You have your company, you're able to speak, you know, whatever. And I say, I don't have it all, but what I have is magical, and that is a wife. You know, I think men have been able to rule the world for, you know, literally
most
eons,
of the world,
right?
Yeah. Most of humanity,
right?
At least. Yeah.
Because of these magical little fairies that we call wives, who work behind the scenes and get stuff done.
Yeah.
So my son is not, you know, he doesn't even notice it. He'll say, "I wish mom was home,"
right.
or he'll FaceTime me. That helps. I'm never gone for too long, but he's got a mom who drops him off at school and picks him up from school and coaches. Like I married a person who likes sports ball, and all of them. I understand there's more than one.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah.
And goes to events and takes them to Vikings games. So it's kind of fascinating. Very, very not of interest to me at all. So it works out real well. So I think, you know, it's a values thing. It's a priority for our family.
Well, I mean, I really hear that, and I appreciate you sort of talking about, like, I am working so that hopefully people don't have to have the same struggle that you had. I think is really important, and I think is important for someone who hasn't had that struggle to be aware of as well. Like to know, like, this isn't just, I'm not just a good person, or
oh God, no.
I'm not.
Oh my God, I'm barely.
But I think we there's a view of someone who does any kind of advocacy as some kind of altruistic thing, and actually what I get much more excited about is how much, for me, like, I am engaged in change-making work in a very selfish way because I want to enjoy my life and where I live, and it's really hard for me to enjoy it when there's so much systematic oppression.
Yeah.
It is very selfish for me when I'm trying to work for change because I want to have more joy in my life.
Yeah.
It's not because I feel bad. It's because I want to enjoy the people I'm with more often, and I have a hard time enjoying it knowing that there's not actual equality. And that's what I hear in your story. You're like, I'm not trying to be a hero.
No.
I'm trying to be happy with my life.
And I think, you know, all of the work that I'm trying to do extends to, you know, a broader sort of social justice movement, which for me is really about, I can't ask for a seat at the table if I'm not looking around to see who's not there.
Yeah.
You know, and inviting them too. Like, equality is equality. Equity.
Yeah,
is what I'm interested in. And so that means embracing, you know, all of those issues that go hand in hand with a lack of equity, you know, a lack of equality. I think just being cognizant of what, you know, Indigenous people and people of color and, you know, people in our community who exist below the poverty line and, you know, deal with mental health issues. I mean, they're like, it all goes hand in hand. Who's not here with me?
Yeah.
Who doesn't have these opportunities too? I say to people all the time, like, yes, I'm queer. Yep, I've had my share of moments, but I'm white. And I have the luxury of hiding there.
Yeah.
And if I didn't use my voice, I could have hidden my whole life. But there are people that I love that don't have the same luxury. And if I can use my voice to call attention to the inequities that those people experience every single day and can never hide from, then that's what I'm here for.
Do you have at home, but also you work in tech, which is a very specific sector, and then you work in advocacy spaces. And I think a lot of those things, there's a view. I mean, you talked about the Instagram view of like, oh, everything seems great. But I also think a lot of the stories told around people doing advocacy work, and you do that kind of advocacy work in the tech space as well, is seen as like this brutal grind. And I'm wondering what your relationship is to like joy in that work, and that like both change-making work and just working in the technological space where I don't know what joy looks like in that space.
Yeah.
But like, do you have a relationship to that in the work?
Yeah, I mean, listen,
I'm listening.
Listen, sir. I wasn't even talking to you. I'm talking to them.
Yeah.
Those people. I think I don't do much without experiencing some joy. And the reason for that is it's just sort of how I'm wired. And it's always the people that you interact with, right? It's other people that bring joy, that allow me to experience joy just in meeting them and learning from them and interacting with them. So I think other people in the LGBTQ movement who have taught me things, who I've learned from, who are heroes to me. I think as far as the tech thing goes, you know, I don't want to say that we've been able to build a little bubble here with our little company, but in some ways, you know, the idea that we are a values-based company and we get to live our values here and be who we are here protects us from the larger, you know, problem maybe in the tech space. And then we can be a little, you know, bastion of change. Yeah. We can influence some amount of change, and we can raise our hands and serve as an example of what happens when you try to be conscious.
Yeah.
So I find joy in that. I find joy in the people that I get to work with and the clients that we get to work with. And here's the deal. I mean, I think one thing that I'm, you know, not necessarily good at, but open to is just recognizing that we screw up. I screw up all the time. I don't know what I'm doing, you know, and there's joy in the little victories in spite of my stupid, you know. So, yeah, I mean, I was listening to NPR this morning on my way into work, and it was Carrie Miller's show, and it's the one she's doing, and I'm not going to remember the name of it, but it's the one she's doing leading up to the election, and she was talking to one of the women who is a co-host and founder of the podcast Identity Politics. And she was a woman of color. I believe she's a Muslim, and she was talking about how, you know, sort of hope is this thing that fuels us. And as a woman of color, she was saying, if I don't find some joy in the work that I do, I am not doing justice to the people who got me here, right? And I sort of feel the same way. Like, if there is no joy in continuing to push that, you know, sometimes immovable wall, I'm doing a disservice to the people who died, you know, trying to get me to here. Yeah. Like, my job is to keep pushing. And there is joy in recognizing how far we've come, even as we acknowledge how far we have to go.
I'm mindful of your time.
Yeah.
You're very busy and important.
I am.
Lady.
I'm glad you said it, because
well, you wear a shirt that says that, right?
Yeah. So. Very busy and important.
People have to say that.
That would be hilarious.
A question I like to ask, and will now ask you, so it didn't really need a preface, is, do you have suggestions where people can go to learn more about queer families? Yes. If it's reading, if it's internet, if it's some other thing, like a way people can, if people want to better understand it, hook into that kind of work, want to know something about it, like where do they go? Yeah, I mean, I always direct people to the Family Equality Council website. It's at familyequality.org. And there is, you know, like a book nook corner with all sorts of recommended reading. There's Ask the Experts there. They will connect you with other people in your community that are involved. If there's policy work you want to get involved in, you'll find out where regionally you can get involved in that. There are people that live and work for Family Equality Council in the South, on the West Coast, in the Northwest, in the Northeast, and in the Midwest. So, and they are really connected to the activities on the ground. So you can find the regional folks.
There are regional people that are developing programming all the time or partnering with organizations where the programming is, all about our families and connecting our families to each other and resources. And there's all sorts of things. If you want to start a family, we just merged with a family formation organization that's entirely focused on queer family formation. So whether or not you want to adopt from foster, or you want to move through surrogacy, or you want to figure out ways where you can have a baby naturally or as naturally as is available to us, Family Equality Council has that content available on the website as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
And if people want to know more about you or connect with you, what are the right ways to do that?
Well, my company is Clockwork, and clockwork.com is where you find out about Clockwork. And you can find out about me on my website, which is nancylyons.com.
Yeah.
Or on Twitter. My handle there is Nylons, and Lyons, when people look at it, they see nylons. Or
you don't actually wear nylons very much.
I haven't worn nylons since you could buy them in a grocery store in an egg. Do you remember those plastic eggs?
I remember being puzzled by them.
Yes.
Why does my mother need a big egg?
When I would do choir, inevitably my father would have to go to the store for tampons or an egg of hose.
Yes.
Right? Like those were the two things. The poor Irish man, he was distraught, but we managed. But yeah, I don't wear nylons, but that's my handle on Instagram and Twitter and all the places.
Fantastic. Well, Nancy, I really appreciate your time and your vulnerability today.
Thank you for coming to see me. It's always a pleasure, Levi.
Yeah.